Welcome back to Global TV Talk Show. I'm in San Diego, and today is April 19, and the sun is actually shining in San Diego. It's been rare this past couple of months. And our special guest today is Mel Smith, and he's coming to us today from the DC metro area. Hi, Mel Smith.
Hi, Ed. Good to see you again.
I know this is like the first time. No, I think you were on an early show 3 years ago.
That's correct.
Yeah. So for the sake of the audience, let me say that Mel and I have known each other a very long time, and always within the context of the international business community and interactions, whether it's in Europe or New York or Miami or the DC area or beyond. And today we're going to talk about Mel today and the company that he's representing in a 5-star way. Welcome, Mel. Tell us officially your title and your position and about the company.
Sure. Excuse me. First of all, good morning, everybody. It's great to be back, Ed. So my role is as the business development manager for the DeWitt companies. And that's a family of 5 companies. I specifically actually focus on working with DeWitt Move worldwide, but we have offices in Guam, 5 offices in Hawaii, an office in Alaska. So we're very strong presence in the Indo-Pacific. We have a freight forwarding company that's headquartered in City of Industry outside of Los Angeles, California, and a branch in DC where I'm located. My role is in business development with government and corporate accounts. The role on the federal agency side is focused on humanitarian logistics, where the last, I guess, almost 20 years of my career has been working with federal agencies, USAID contractors, Department of State contractors in austere environments, and I can say specifically Iraq, Afghanistan, South Sudan, Libya, Sub-Saharan Africa, Southeast Asia. So that's where my experience for the last 20 years has played heavily. Previous to those years, I was in corporate relocation, working for several large organizations, and had the opportunity to live and work in Munich, Germany for a few years in that industry. So I bring some of that experience with also having served on the boards for the local chapter, the Greater Washington Employee Relocation Council, working with families in global transition on the board as well, and working with an organization called International Stability Operation Association, also known as ISOA or IPOA, in its previous iteration, as the chair of the Standards Committee, which was the effort of that committee was to make sure that those organizations, security companies, DOS contractors in construction, demining, ordnance disposal, kept the highest level of operational functionality to support the government, federal agencies, and NGO communities around the world.
Okay, we'll take a breath and want some water. So
Yeah, right.
I thank you very much for that deep dive into history here. So you recently came back from Eastern Europe, and specifically Poland, Ukraine, Romania, and so what's it like being in a war zone?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I didn't see any conflict. I'm just to be fair, it was my trip. I didn't actually spend any time in Romania. I had some consultation stuff in Romania, but I went from Poland, Warsaw, to a town called Rzeszów, and I crossed the border by foot into Ukraine, into Lviv. It was an eye-opening experience. It was I don't know how to describe it because I don't have any context to really say, well, people were stoic. When I hit Lviv, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, by the way, people were going about their business. There is a curfew there. When I checked into the hotel, the first thing they did after signing all the documents and turning over the credit cards was get a view of the bunker. I've never had that experience before, where someone's like, "This is the bunker. This is where you go if the air raid sirens go on." And then, but crossing into the, 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 uh, the country on foot was a really interesting experience. Um, there's no doubt that there's recognition that they're at conflict and there's a war. Um, the Ukrainians that I did speak to didn't talk about a rebuilding. They talked about a building anew. And that changed my perspective on how to consider what's happening in the country.
Let's go a little bit deeper here. If I may ask, I know something about the area, but not certainly like you do, and others who are in the area right now. How long a walk was it for you into Lviv from where you were in Poland?
Uh, so there's a border town called Medyka on the Polish side of the border. There it was probably 400 feet, 400 not feet, 400 meters, 400 yards to the Polish border. Crossed the Polish border. Basically, it was like a little. I would say it's more than a hut, but it was a station with 52 people in it. Maybe took a minute to clear customs. Walked another 400 yards to the Ukrainian side, to Shahini. Similar. When there were the things that stood out. Number one, it was relatively small. Myself and my colleague were the only two people at the border crossing. It was a Sunday, and we crossed on foot. There were a lot of trucks lined up at the truck crossing on the road. The things that stood out, there were only women working at the border stations. It took a minute, and the thing that was cemented in my mind was there was a security officer with a sidearm, and she looked at me and said, "Volunteer." And immediately I was thinking, well, volunteer. She's thinking maybe I was thinking NGO because that's the experience that I've had, crossing borders. And then it dawned on me half a second later she meant volunteer to fight. So we cleared customs. I said matter of minutes, and they were like gypsy cabs, local men that were parked at the Shahini. Took us, negotiated a price in euros to drive us into Lviv. We drove about 40 minutes into Lviv and walked to the hotel. And with the exception of the sandbags you'd see in windows, and you didn't have the sense that there was a active conflict in the town, right, in the country. Certainly not in Lviv.
Thank you. So when she said to you, volunteer, what'd you say?
I nodded my head because my immediate thought was, I am, volunteering to come to help, right? Not that I was actually going to fight. It never occurred to me, and initially, it didn't occur to me initially. That's what she was asking. But there was also no sense of like, hey, you're in a different country. I don't speak Ukrainian. I've never been that far east before. I've been to Poland a few times. But the trip to get to the border was interesting because I had to go into Warsaw, and Warsaw take a flight to Rzeszów, Poland, which is about 20 minutes in the air in southeastern Poland. Take a train from Rzeszów to another city, Przemysl. Take a taxi from the Przemysl train station, which was once again like somebody's Dodge Caravan. A 20-minute ride to the border town, and at the border town, there were NGOs that had set up a migration tents or small huts. So you did really get the sense of, hey, this is something that you're not used to, right? I mean, there's something that is very there's a kind of a sense of foreboding, if you will, as I reached that point. And the fact that I might have seen 4 other people that were doing this, coming from the Ukrainian side to the Polish side. So, there was fear going into it, and there was an anticipation of, hey, things could go wrong. I think you have to have that realization. But after I actually hit the ground in Rzeszów, there were military aircraft on the tarmac. There were ground-to-air rocket systems on the tarmac. all of a sudden I felt like if this was probably one of the safer areas or regions to be in terms of having military support, right?
So you've been in problematic areas over the years, as you mentioned, in Africa and other places. So this is in your role as a transportation executive, an
Mm-hmm.
organizer, logistics,
Mm-hmm.
getting things to and out,
Right.
right? And
Yeah.
so when you were just there in Poland, you were on a mission. I don't expect you to share secrets right now, but I would assume that you were involved with American Chamber of Commerce and European organizations that are getting ready to, well, I'll use the word rebuild
Mm-hmm.
Ukraine. But also, Poland has obviously become the front line for NATO, i.e., America, uh, towards the Russians. And I saw pictures, press about the chamber meeting or the organization meeting that was held in Poland recently, and I guess you were at that.
Mm-hmm.
And I would assume very major logistics and energy and resource American and other companies were in that audience also. Let's just say government contractors to the Defense Department and State Department in particular,
Mm-hmm.
along with their counterparts from across Europe, probably. And so that was pretty heavy duty. And there must have been some really interesting, again, I don't need you to divulge anything, but it must have been fascinating to sit in on talks and meet some people who are actually doers, making things happen and getting things ready for what will be a Marshall Plan kind of enterprise that is ready to spring forward, probably on a moment's notice.
Yeah, that's true.
Those are my words.
No, that's accurate. So part of how I've been trained from an operational standpoint is to, in every country that I'd mentioned that I'd worked in, leadership, or previous leadership had gone in, done a transportation study, viewed, documented viable routes via surface, meaning combination of road, rail, and sea, via air, um, the process to receive goods, clear customs, and then the transit to the destinations, right? So there'd be multiple destinations. So whether it's Lviv or Kiev or things like that. Now, we only went as far as Lviv, but you mentioned Poland as the primary, and Poland is the primary gateway um, into the Ukraine. But what people never talk about is the other NATO nation that's the secondary gateway, which is Romania. So there is that lack of awareness, primarily because the support I think Poland's been giving to the Ukraine and also to NATO initially. I believe the border is larger as well that it shares with the Ukraine.
And
But there are
also, it faces the Black Sea.
correct, but then the Romania is also on the way the port of Constanța is there as well, so it's viable ocean routes. So what I was trying to do was to make sure that there are humanitarian organizations already in there, the World Health Organization and its International Medical Corps, International Organization for Migration. There is the channels for commercial opportunities, whether it's as a supporting the Department of State or Department of Defense, don't really exist in Ukraine right now. So everybody's kind of gearing up to support them. There are humanitarian organizations. There's other things that are happening, but that's through political channels and channels that private organizations don't necessarily have as much access to. If you're doing humanitarian logistics and work and have those types of clients, absolutely. I visited many, probably about 6 or 7 warehouses in and around Lviv, and the majority of where medicines. There was some food. There were generators, which were the biggest need at the moment because there's power shedding that happens in the country. So there's mandatory blackouts to help support the pressure on the energy grid. So yeah, all that you said in terms of people preparing for the go signal, those who are paying attention, that's what they've done.
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing that. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about yourself and about this company you work for, DeWitt. It's not Do It, it's DeWitt, right?
Well, I've heard people say DeWitt or DeWitt, but DeWitt, yeah, exactly.
Well, because you guys do it. That's so
right, DeWitt, yeah. DeWitt.
You're living the
I
brand.
like that, yeah, just exactly.
Yeah, make sure John sees this, okay?
I will.
Okay, hi, John. Okay,
Yeah.
so you mentioned earlier in the warm-up neutral thinking, motivation, and somebody by the name of Trevor Moawad, Maxwell Maltz, Abraham Maslow. These are all psychologist type people, but it's actually social, human interaction stuff.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I think most people know of Abraham Maslow. Let's start with the probably the oldest first in terms of the process, right? So most people think of Maslow and his hierarchy of needs. He has this transformational thought about being and becoming. I don't know how many people have actually read any of Maslow's books, but I read a couple of them. Towards the Psychology of Being is the one where he really goes into the concept of the hierarchy of needs and being, becoming, and self-actualization. So if you take the idea of self-actualization, being something that you want to be and becoming that thing. So it's a process. It's a continual process. You don't automatically, you don't think I'm going to be a millionaire today and then tomorrow you're a millionaire, right? It's a process. So what does that mean? What does that behavior have to mean in terms of the ideas, the work, and yet because you can't just really work yourself to being a millionaire. If that were the case, everybody that was working in a coal mine or in a factory would be a millionaire, right? You imagine with just hard work. So there are a few things that go on with that. If you go forward, there's a Maxwell Maltz who wrote a book called Psycho-Cybernetics, and it's not a religious book. It's about how to steer the mind towards success. So it goes back to the Greek terms for psycho and then cybernetics.
So I read that a very long time ago, and I don't remember it, but it's just flashback, just like that. And there was another book that's sort of similar, and I'm talking about like 30, 40 years ago is when I was looking at that. But the magic of believing, not religious at all, although that certainly has something to do with it, but the magic of believing, seeing deeper into what you can do with your own belief and attitude on any specific topic, how you can get yourself out of a rut, change your direction. No drugs, no magic, no BS, but it's just thinking things through, critical thinking, basically.
Yeah. So I would say, following that line, you might say Maxwell Maltz is one of the fathers of creative visualization, positive visualization. And he does take you through a step process and exercise in how you do this. It's not just you think and then don't do anything. There has to be action engaged with it. And interestingly enough, he was a board certified plastic surgeon, and he transitioned into this because he said, in his own words,
that's right,
he would perform surgeries, change people's ears or their noses or
and
whatever.
And then they change their perception, self-perception, into the magic of now you can be someone else because here you are. You don't look like you used to.
Correct. And it was the funny thing about this, though, is that he said it was the things that motivated him were the ones that didn't change. What happened? Why didn't the physical change alter the perceptions of themselves and spur them on to successes, right? So I remember once a professor of mine, the same one who introduced me to all these things in the psycholinguistics before, said when you're trying to study and understand a subject, you don't study the norm, you study the dysfunction and figure out what that dysfunction or lack of functionality or decreased functionality, what impacts that or causes that. So fast forward to Trevor Moawad, and I came across him on social media, and I'm not a big haunter. I don't haunt social media a lot. You're one of the few people that really follow because I'm so engaged, and I see all the really good work that you're doing. But he was a mental coach for a lot of athletes and and professional sports teams and college sports teams. Among his most famous clients was Russell Wilson, who was the Super Bowl winning quarterback for the Seattle Seahawks. Now, it's the late Trevor Moawad, who passed away several years ago to cancer, but he has two books that he wrote. One is called It Takes What It Takes, and the other one is called Getting to Neutral, and expanding on the ideas of Maslow and Maxwell Maltz. Maxwell Maltz used to say or Abraham Maslow had this theory of, you don't start doing something and then it said become successful overnight. And if you use the analogy of being sick and getting healthy, you don't go from sick to healthy. You go from sick to unsick and unsick to healthy. Moawad took this idea. It's like when people tell you to be positive, that's an unrealistic, because
Right.
you don't go from a negative thought to
you don't know how to get
positive. Right. There's a process in between that is called neutral, and that neutral thinking says the past is the past, it exists. The present is about how you analyze the situation you're in and implement the things that you need to do to become successful, to change that, right? So in all the things that we're talking about, and I'm talking about going from this idea of I've never been to the Ukraine, how am I going to do this? I speak a couple European languages, but I don't speak any Eastern European languages. How am I going to manage this? I could listen to what people said and say, don't go. But you think about anytime you're in any conflict, they're humans who are in a situation where they need help and they need support. So what I have to figure out is how to neutralize this thinking, to know that I want to have this productive for a couple different reasons. Number one, to help the company, not necessarily in an order, to help myself and to help the people in the Ukraine, right? So when you start to try to unravel all the stuff and deal with what are the things that are holding you back? What are the things causes of fear? And you can take this and translate this, and I'll make this functional about what you're doing in work and business development or any challenges you have. I've heard so many times people lead conversations with what they don't do or what they can't do. And Trevor used to say, don't say stupid things out loud. It's kind of predictive, right? And you're letting everybody know, including yourself, that you have this mindset of something that is challenging, but other people are typically doing it. Someone's already in the Ukraine. Somebody's already moving goods to the Ukraine. What I'm trying to do is figure out how to do it myself so that I can share this and impart this knowledge onto other people from actual experiences. I've come back. Some people say it required bravery. I don't know. I don't know if that's a brave thing, but I thought about what it must be like, people who are living in that situation every day and no one trying to come to help, right? Or no one acknowledging
bravery right there. Boy.
So I appreciate that. It's very kind of you. It's very kind of you. But but I had an option, right? I didn't have to do that. And so for the people that are living it daily, that presented the challenge to me of like, if I were in that situation. And I think all of us at a micro level can say we were in situations where somebody who didn't need to help us helped us. And that's a difference between where we are today and where we could have been if someone didn't see that, right? And didn't see that and want to extend something to us, whether it was a job opportunity, whether it was trusting us to lending us something or giving us an encouraging word. So all of those things are kind of what together motivated me to want to do that. And also think about the practical way to find success, because every one of us is dealing with challenges every day. Are you going to hit your quota? Are you going to be able to get your kid to pay the tuition for you? And I'm not saying all these answers are going to come out successful. It's about how you approach it and looking at alternatives and staying in a neutral mindset to say, well, if this doesn't happen, is this the worst case scenario for me, or are there other alternatives, and not just giving up or not relinquishing your goals.
So I want to just jump in here, and so you can breathe a little bit. So
I've had a lot of coffee this morning. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I'm going to get another one. In the world of expats, mm-hmm. So in your part of your experience, you dealt with expats who are, if they don't figure out how to move their mind from where they were into neutral and then regroup and rebuild from within, reskill, upskill somehow to take a step, then they're going to wind up hurting that assignment
Right.
And that's going to wreck a person's career
Right.
and perhaps a marriage
Yeah.
or
Absolutely.
relationship.
Hmm.
And so the application audience is right now very cool. And thank you for taking us through that labyrinth. It's not a yellow brick road,
No,
as
it's not.
Elton John sings about,
Right.
but I love the song. But
But yeah.
it's a pathway,
Right.
but it's within yourself to learn that it's okay to shift gears, or I don't know what the
Wow.
words are, but that's it.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better. It is a shift. It is a shift in your thinking. You know, having driven trucks in Germany and actually packed up and moved people, and then 3 or 4 months later, move one of the spouses back or move the couple back, or being with on the board of Families and Global Transition with all these coaches and therapists and counselors who are trying to offer support to the supporting spouses and their families who are not engaged 9 to 5 or 12 hours or 14 hours a day in an environment where they're working and have to figure out how to create a functional life, who may not be functionally literate or fluent at any level in the country that they're moving, losing their friends, from losing them from a day-to-day interaction. All of those things take a shift to be successful, and not everybody can do it. That's the first. Never make the shift in short order or to create the success that they need from the environment that they came. You know, I spoke German when I got to Germany, and it was still very difficult. And I spoke English when I came back, and it was still a difficult transition. Um, just because you think differently, you behave in a different way, modified way, or adjusted way. So yeah, the shift is what is critical.
We're running out of time, although I would love you to come back and do an extension of this chat. And I'm going to find a way that we could work together on this.
And I would love that. I guess I tried to fit in a lot. It's hard to tell you about this experience because it was only about 3 days, but it was significant. And I've gone back since then. And the thing that stays with me, because having been through, seeing some of the other crises that I worked with in terms and where the places that uh, I was involved, this is this will last in terms of the build of the Ukraine for the foreseeable future in our lifetimes. So it's important that we create a mindset that is open to that. It's not a 5-year plan. It's not a 10-year plan. As you said before, aptly, it's like a Marshall Plan. It will be a Marshall Plan for
Yeah.
the Ukraine. Um, and and to those who are listening and keep an open mind, I'm sharing this with you because people don't know about it. There are American organizations in both Ukraine and Poland and Romania. Romania is very important as well, and it will become more important as the as things develop in a situation for Ukraine where we can see the conflict and the war ending and the Ukrainians emerging. There's a very strong, very resilient, very educated country. They have human capacity there. So you're going to see things develop on a level that you may not see it in underserved countries in terms of capacity and academic access.
As we come to a close, let me ask you a couple of rapid fire things here. Have you been to Odessa?
No, I have not.
Yeah. Now that's historically a major port
Hmm.
in the south of Ukraine, right on the Black Sea.
Hmm.
And so far as I know, there hasn't been hardly any. Maybe there has been some conflict, war conflict, but for some reason, the Russians have been scared away from doing anything there.
Hmm. Hmm. I don't know from a military standpoint, so I won't speak on that. I can tell you that I've had conversations about going further in, but I would go with security um, further into the country, whether it's Kyiv or Kherson or Kharkiv, if that happens in short order. But No, the only, yeah, I don't mean to, this is not to be a joke, but I went to NYU, and the only Odessa I used to go to was Little Odessa in the East Village. There was a restaurant there. We were right on that. We were right on. And I guess part of this is the whole awareness. You don't realize sometimes how the exposure you have, but my dormitory in the campus in the East Village was right next to a Ukrainian ethnic Ukrainian community, where the Ukrainian National Home and Little Odessa and other Ukrainian restaurants and stores were. So somehow that seeped in, I guess, into my consciousness over those years.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
Okay, what is how do people get in touch with you?
msmith@dewittmove.com, DEWITTMOVE.com. They can find me on LinkedIn and Melvin Garfield Smith. And they can certainly reach out and call at 202-304-3856. It's very generous of you and gracious of you allowing me to do that. Thank you.
Okay, see you soon. Okay,
See you soon.
that's Mel in DC, and I'm in San Diego, and I'm going to go eat breakfast and have a bit and